We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
I think the first time I laughed when watching that show was when they parked in front of a bush and Matt was like, could you have parked any closer to this bush? And at that point I was like, I love this show so much. This is my show.
I think what got me was when they delivered like the sign to the funeral home that was like, there are no ghosts in this funeral home, certified by OPO.
Yeah.
Like, I just,
Yes,
dude. Yeah. Ghosts in the Hood is just a wonderful entry into the paranormal research TV show scene.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a gem. I'm hoping that they'll be able to get more seasons on the books.
They keep like posting on Instagram, like, oh, here's this at Hulu for a second season. I'm like, yeah, give me a second season.
Yeah,
I watched like 20 seasons of that show, man. It's so good.
It's so funny. The characters are great on it. They're just their back and forth is amazing. So anyway,
Yes.
highly recommend this show if anybody hasn't watched it. It's called Ghost in the Hood and it's on Hulu.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. It was on some other channel initially, but it's on Hulu now. It's streaming on Hulu. We're trying to get them a second season. We're trying to get them like a bevy of seasons. Like I want to see a dozen more seasons come out of them because they're just amazing.
They're great.
They're wonderful. Their rapport is just fantastic.
Yes.
And it's also just really nice to see ghost hunters that aren't pasty white guys.
Yeah, I know it's just a new look. It's a new spin on the paranormal. That's refreshing.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to see them go to places that aren't like, here's an old sanatorium that was built in the 1920s, but they're like going to businesses, and they're going to businesses that you like little corner stores and stuff like that, like little places. They're not going to like old prisons and places where you're like, oh yeah, there's obviously ghost stories coming out of there. They're like, here, I own a nightclub, and or I own a
funeral home.
Yeah, exactly. Of course there are ghost stories from a funeral home. Come on.
Yeah, come on now.
It's awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome. Dude, this is the perfect segue into this week's episode anyway.
This is Slaying Monsters. We got Matt over here.
Yo.
I'm EJ. We're going to get into part 2 of the Fox Sisters.
That's right. Today I'll be using the article Heavily Historic Parking Lot, The Rise and Fall of Corinthian Hall by Emily Morey, which was posted on the Rochester Public Library's website. When we last left the Fox Sisters, Maggie and Kate had just moved in with their sister Leah to Rochester, New York. They'd been driven from their home in Hydesville by unexplained knockings, which were actually caused by Maggie and Kate cracking their knuckles against things, remember? Leah, who is an unwed mother, had seen the crowds gathering at the Fox house looking for spirits, and she realized the potential that the girls had. So, they had been in Leah's home for just a few weeks, according to her, when the rappings became so pervasive that they drove her to move everyone, herself and the girls. Coincidentally, the spirits pushed them to move into a bigger house, a 3-story walk-up.
Matt, wait, I'm getting something. Matt, the spirits, they're telling us we must move to... What is that? Oh my God, we must move to Southern California? On the beach? Well, wait a minute. No less than $3 million home?
They're telling us, and they just won't stop knocking until we do.
They just insist. I'm sorry.
You just wait. These spirits are going to get very insistent about a lot of things throughout the next couple episodes.
Everybody's getting some great ideas right here with this.
Now, according to Leah's account, even in that 3-story walk-up, new construction, by the way, new construction on Prospect Street in Rochester, even there, the sounds continued. At some point, their mother, Margaret, moved in with them as well, which might have been a catalyst for the sisters to continue. Either way, the first witness to the spiritual manifestations in this new house was a man named Calvin Brown, who Barbara Weisberg, in her biography of the sisters, cryptically said Margaret, quote, took under her wing. He would go on to marry Leah in 1851. According to Leah's autobiography, Calvin was especially accosted by the spirits. They would throw slippers at him. They would hit him with his own cane, and they would dance jigs on the floor over top of his bedroom, on like the floor above his bedroom.
How did they hit him with his own cane?
I mean, I guess they probably took the cane from him. So we're going to get into this in a little bit. Okay. But this is all taken directly from Leah's account, her autobiography, which is a... I don't know that Leah is necessarily a reliable narrator.
Oh,
I'll say that. Okay.
I get the sense these sisters, though, did not like her their sister's boyfriend.
Right. Yeah. Calvin claimed that they were caused by the devil and his imps. And he stayed in the house anyway, probably because he was attracted to Leah. So now, in April of 1848, about a month after the sisters had been sent to Leah's, their father made a startling discovery in the basement of their farmhouse. Now, this is where they had been rapping and, making noise, and they were digging up the basement there, remember? He found broken pots, hair, and bone fragments in their basement. John Fox, of course, assumed that this was evidence of the deceased peddler that they had been speaking about before. Now, far more likely, John Fox probably came upon the remains of an indigenous settlement.
Oh.
Archaeologists have found evidence of Seneca and Cayuga hunting camps in Savannah, New York, that is, which is just 20 miles east of Hydesville.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the basement of this house?
Well,
I know it's like dirt, so you're going deeper into the ground. I know.
Yeah, I mean, he probably built...
Right.
Well, he didn't build it because Dr. Hyde built it, but it was probably built on the remains of a hunting camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whoever it was likely fished the lakes in the region and probably hunted like bear, wolf, that sort of thing, deer. It wouldn't be remarkable for Dr. Hyde to build his house in that area. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of population out there. Still, this discovery gave credence to John Fox's daughters and their powers of spiritual communication.
Wow. Yeah, that's all they needed.
Right, yeah. Yeah, here's a confirmation now. They were saying it. Well, the daughters weren't saying it, of course, too. The ghosts were speaking through the daughters, and they were relaying the communication. And now, boom, here's what in John Fox's mind is evidence that his daughters were making contact.
Damn, that's like passive ghost income. It's
Seriously.
Like, they really laid the groundwork. Anything you find there, oh yeah, that's the ghost.
Well, totally, right?
And then those sisters can be like, yes, it is the ghosts.
Yeah, there's a lot of after the fact, like recontextualization throughout this story, just like that, where you say, oh, these things that we found, they must have come from the peddler.
Yeah.
Not, oh, they must have, they could have even been from the previous owner of the house. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Now, during the summer of 1848, a man named Isaac Post made contact with the Foxes. He'd been their neighbor back in Hydesville, and he now lived in Rochester running a general store. Post was a Quaker and a reasonably intelligent man, but he too fell under the influence of the sisters. Isaac Post worked to help the Fox sisters set up a complex method of communication with these spirits that they were speaking. If the spirit knocked once, that meant no. 3 times meant yes. 5 times meant that the spirit wanted the alphabet. So if that happened, the medium was supposed to slowly recite the alphabet. A, B, C, and so on. And the spirit would spell words out letter by letter.
Awesome.
This is like the original version of a spirit board or a Ouija board, right?
Yeah.
Those aren't going to be popular for another 60 years.
Do they exist yet? I can't remember what we said last time.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Well, officially, like, a Ouija board didn't exist. There were sort of these vague methods of spirit communication, but nothing that was standardized that way.
Gotcha. Okay.
The Post family left their Quaker church very recently to this. See, in their view, the Quaker belief system had taken on too much of a Calvinistic outlook. Remember, this was the idea that your fate was just predetermined and you had no control over it at all. So, at the time, slavery and women's rights were the most important issues of the day. The Posts were very passionate about both. They were friends with Frederick Douglass. In fact, they were actually instrumental in Rochester's Underground Railroad, and they helped by hosting and feeding refugees in their house. And then they would transport the fugitives to ships to cross Lake Ontario, and then they could disappear into Canada.
Cool.
Right?
Good.
Yeah,
Yes,
good people, right?
Yep.
Yeah. In July of 1848, Amy Post, who was Isaac's wife, attended the Seneca Falls Convention. We talked about this last time. And there she met Susan B. Anthony. She was so moved by the opinions expressed during the convention that she started the Rochester Women's Rights Convention. All in all, the Post activism put them at odds with the Quaker Church, which discouraged their members from associating with non-Quakers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they also separated men and women during their meetings.
The Quakers did?
The Quakers did.
Wow, I'm surprised. I always thought of them as very progressive.
Well, I think when you think of these progressive Quakers, you're probably thinking of the movement that the Post helped to found.
Oh.
See, because the Post left the church and joined the Congressional Friends movement, later called the Progressive Friends, which is what we think of when we think of like the Quaker Friends societies. Yeah. This gave them the freedom not only to participate in the activism, but expose them to beliefs and philosophies that they otherwise might have avoided if they'd remained in their traditional practices. Now, Isaac Post considered himself something of a spiritualist at the time. He and Amy, along with a few others, began holding regular meetings with the Fox sisters, where they would use his alphabet method for communicating with the dead. And of course, this communication, what was it? It was a whole bunch of knocking. Rap, 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 right?
Of course.
So, we're talking Rochester, right? Rochester, it's a town. What do you have in a town? You have neighbors. The racket that these alleged spirits caused was enough to anger Leah's neighbor, who confronted them. Leah claims that she tried to talk to the spirits and ask them if they needed something to do.
Okay.
So, according to Leah, not only did the spirits didn't just communicate during the meetings, the spirits communicated like all the time. Kind of constantly incessant.
There was always the knocking then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Not just in the sessions.
No, all the time.
Wow. And it was loud enough to bother the neighbors?
Yeah, through the walls.
Oh, because they were sharing walls.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And remember, again, this is two young girls with nothing to do. They're making their own fun. Of
course.
Right?
I don't blame them.
And first they had their mom and dad as an audience. Then they had all the people of Hydesville coming in to talk about them and be like, oh, wow, let's participate in this session. Now they have these Quakers coming in and actually like relaying messages and things. It's no longer the yes or no communication. It's like, oh, I can spell out words and things like that.
I imagine that this changes a person. Like, you grew up as a kid and you start to see people come in and adults that you think know everything. Because when you're a kid, you think adults know everything.
Right.
And they come in and they're just hoodwinked by you.
Yeah.
And it must change the way that you view the whole world. It must mess you up a little bit to be like, these people who are supposed to know everything, they don't.
Right.
I can fool them. Like, what is going on here?
Totally. They had pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. And no one was calling them out. No one.
Yeah.
So, according to Leah, she asked the spirits, do you need something to do? And the rapping responded and spelled out a message. Apparently, this is the message it spelled out. I'm going to read it. Dear friends, you must proclaim these truths to the world. This is the dawning of a new era, and you must not try to conceal it any longer. When you do your duty, God will protect you, and good spirits will watch over you. I agree, Yotzi.
Yotzi thinks that was amazing.
This was all them spelling out the alphabet. A, B, C.
I was thinking
and the spirits,
that.
boom, boom, boom. Now, again, this all comes from Leah's first-hand account, her autobiography. Okay? According to her neighbor was fed up with everything, right? He contacted Leah's landlord, and she and her sisters were promptly evicted. Ooh. They moved to a cottage on Troop Street in Rochester, which had been provided for Leah by some friends. Those friends were the Posts. Leah recalls this happening in September of 1849. Shortly after this, their mother, Margaret, left to return to her husband, John, in Hydesville, likely because the conditions in that small house had just become so cramped. Mm. I think it's necessary at this point to discuss Leah's narrative and the reliability of it. Okay. So, until her death, right, she swore that the ghost activity, the spiritual manifestations, that they were real, legitimate spirits. It's also worth remembering that Leah was an unmarried mother, survived by teaching music lessons, and was suddenly under the burden of taking care of her two younger sisters, as well as her own daughter, Lizzie. That's 4 mouths to feed. 5 if Margaret stayed with them. It was common for you to take lodgers in this day to help offset the cost of your housing, but no matter what, Leah was living hand to mouth, guaranteed. I suspect that Leah was evicted from the property for failing to pay the rent.
Okay.
Maybe that was mixed with noise complaints from the neighbors.
Maybe it was like a last straw.
Probably. It seems to me that you wouldn't just get evicted for some knocking on the walls, especially when the landlord is like, oh, you have young girls? Okay, I kind of get this. Mm-hmm. Maggie was 14, 15 at the time, so you might expect a little bit better from her. Kate's like 10, 11. You're like, okay, she's fooling around, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that would have been enough to just evict somebody, unless I guess they were making a real racket.
It could have been a different time that we can't place ourselves in and really know. It's
possible. Remember, though, she moved into this 3-story house, and then she moved out just a couple of months later. Sure seems to me that there was some incident there. Mm-hmm. And failure to pay the rent seems pretty obvious.
It does seem obvious. It's a theory. I mean, it's definitely a theory. It could have also just been like the fact that there were people coming in and out at all hours of the night, because when is the ghost activity? It's at night, and it probably drove everybody nuts.
They actually did seances all throughout the day.
They did them all day?
Yeah, we'll talk about later on what their schedule is. Yeah.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
Cool.
Now, the move to Troop Street, to the smaller cottage that the Post provided, marks a change in their story. The Fox sisters began taking more meetings. At first, just with their friends and the Posts, and then slowly they started to bring in outsiders. They would sit around the table and they attempted to converse with these spirits. People began communicating with their deceased relatives and would receive messages from beyond the grave, right? They would ask questions like what direction should I take my business? That would be one that like the Posts would ask. Mm-hmm. Or is my spouse faithful, or something like that, mm-hmm. right?
Should I move to a $3 million house in Southern California?
Exactly.
Yes, you must.
Now, at some point around this time, a journalist named Eliab Capron.
Good job.
Eliab Capron.
Okay.
I always want to say Elijah, but it's Eliab. Eliab.
Wow.
Capron.
Interesting name. Okay.
Yeah. He discovered the Fox sisters, and he became fascinated by them. A lot of Capron's personal information has been lost to history, but we do know that he was a signer of the Seneca Falls Convention. And the 100 Signers Project is doing research into everyone who was present at that convention, and they've pieced together a history of Capron's involvement with the sisters. It's likely that Capron actually learned of the Foxes through Amy Post, who attended the Seneca Falls Convention, right? Initially, Capron was a skeptic. He was a man of science, and he was really eager to see these mediums for himself. Of course, right?
Yeah.
He was also an advocate for the growing field of phrenology, the study of the size and shape of the human skull and how it can be used to determine intelligence.
Yeah, that was a quote science once.
Yeah. It is actually, I would call it unquestionably racist and sexist bullshit.
Yeah. Now, yes, absolutely. But they were.
Well, then it's interesting because then it like really divided the scientific community.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's good that there were people that were like, "This is bullshit."
Oh,
even
yeah.
back then.
Mm-hmm. Even back then,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Now, without getting too far off course, we'll talk a little bit about phrenology. It's phrenology. I'm sorry. We'll talk about phrenology.
Phrenology. Okay.
Phrenology says that if you have a proper sized and shaped skull, you'd have a proper developed brain. Makes sense, right?
No, but okay.
One of the early proponents of phrenology, a dipshit named Francois Joseph Victor Broussais, claimed that non-whites would never become civilized because, and I quote, they had no cerebral organ for producing great artists. And this guy gave fucking lectures on this bullshit. Lectures,
God.
dude. Right?
Okay.
But don't worry. It wasn't just people of color who were the targets of his pseudoscientific garbage. Women's heads were considered insufficient too, which meant that they were unable to develop the organs necessary for science and the arts.
Oh boy.
Instead, what do you think their brains were developed for?
Having children?
Yes.
Caring for children.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Religion. Their brains were developed for the study of religion.
Wow, interesting.
And that helped to make them more suitable for the life at home.
Oh, because they could teach good morals to their young children, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this is the perspective that the supposed skeptic, right, Eliab Capron brought to his first encounter with the Fox sisters. And I think that it is an important insight into the events that follow and how they were able to deceive everyone for so long, like we were talking about before. I don't think that men of this time could conceive of women being untruthful.
Oh, that's interesting.
At least not this level of untruthful. These were men of science, right? Mm-hmm. And they were so proud of their intellect and their powers of reasoning. And they were so condescending to women to begin with. And like they assumed that women had this lower intelligence. And they straight up couldn't conceive of a woman tricking or deceiving them.
Oh, yeah, and their egos probably couldn't handle it, so they had to. It just didn't compute.
Yeah, like it would not happen because they were positive they'd be able to see through the ruse.
That is, oh wow, that is such a good point. And I'm thinking back to like the Salem witch trials, and I'm like, oh well, you know, there was all kinds of talk about how women were being deceptive about, you know, the devil and stuff, but that wasn't them. That was the devil coming into them and influencing them. So it wasn't anything. Yeah, that makes total sense.
The other thing that I think is interesting is they believed that women didn't have the fortitude to sustain their lies and their manipulation. That like their gentle feminine instincts would take over and they'd just break down and reveal their secrets.
I appreciate these Fox sisters for fucking these guys up.
But that's the thing, right? The Fox sisters, they didn't cave. They fucking doubled down, dude. Right? So Capron shows up. He starts having communication with the spirits. And he's blown away by their powers, man. He's like, holy shit. Despite his best efforts, he can't find any fucking visible method for debunking their communication.
Oh, man.
Right? These girls, right? They're not even 20 years old.
Exactly. They're girls. Oh, man.
So, yeah, dude. The spirits here are speaking intelligently about matters that according to him, the sisters just have no business knowing.
Wow. These guys have no... had they ever talked to a woman before?
I mean, they probably didn't listen.
Yeah, they probably never freaking
Right?
listened. Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. So very quickly, the Fox sisters convinced Capron that they were genuine.
Great, yes.
It's about the fall of 1849. Kate, the younger sister, is sent away to nearby Auburn, New York, where she stayed in a boarding house. Capron also lived in Auburn and continued his tests on Kate during her stay. This becomes something of like a common formula for the sisters. Kate is this cute, bright-eyed little girl, and she's the one that everybody flocks to, right? Mm-hmm. Maggie is the middle sister. She's more energetic. She's more lively. She's smiles. She's innocent charm. And I know how gross this fucking sounds, but the 15-year-old girl is the sex appeal of the act.
Oh, okay.
It's fucking gross, but that's what it was at the time.
All right.
So,
Oh.
you know, it like when you think about them and you contextualize them in your mind, you have Kate, who's the kind of the young, sweet one. You have Maggie, who's the sex appeal, and then you have Leah, who's sort of the matriarch of the thing, running things. Okay.
Yeah. All right. It's kind of got a bit of like a Nickelodeon thing going on, or like a, you know.
Yeah, it's a little bit sitcom-y, sure.
It's a little, like, you know, that's weird. So who sexualized the 15-year-old?
Everybody.
Everybody? So
I mean, not everybody, but a lot of the attendants did. There's a very strangely sexual component to their seances.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah.
Weird.
So Capron is studying Kate, and he continues to make trips to Rochester to participate in the Fox sister seances, Leah's and Maggie's. His entire study began to revolve around this rising spiritual consciousness, like hoping that he would become the founder of a new method of scientific understanding, like his role models in phrenology, right? Now, Kate's absence during this time has always struck me as interesting. Barbara Weisberg describes the boarding house as comfy, making it seem like a better place than the hectic, cramped quarters that Kate had been living in with Leah. I kind of suspect that Leah, wanting the best for her siblings, probably sent Kate somewhere nicer in hopes of giving her a better life. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, bills keep coming in. They start piling up on Leah and Maggie's doorstep. It's worth noting that around this time, when Kate gets sent away, the spirits take a sabbatical of sorts, and they disappear from Troop Street for almost 2 weeks. All of a sudden, there's no knocking, any seances that people try to conduct. Spirits just straight up don't respond.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it seems to me that the sisters decided that their joke had just gone on long enough. Once Capron, the journalist, came in, publicity starts to increase, as does public ridicule.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. Leah mentions in her autobiography that her music students disappeared as the Fox sisters rose in fame. And she even says, "What shall we do? How can we live so?"
Oh, man. That's very telling, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So that was her source of income that she was kind of doing in coinciding with the seances. As the seances start to increase, more people start to show up and talk about them and all of that. All of a sudden, all the people who were taking their daughters to go learn music, or the wives and that, are like, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to do that.
It's interesting because it seems like people were very open to it and accepting of it and believed it. So it's interesting to hear about this other subset of the population that was like, I don't want to deal with this.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, remember that we're talking about a society that's already very religiously divided. So there are people who are really fascinated by them and want to learn more and want to participate in the seances. And then there are people who are positive that the girls are doing the work of the devil.
Right. It's like they believe it, but
Yes.
they think it's like evil.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You shouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
Also around this time, John Fox finishes his house in Hydesville. Remember that he had been staying at this house while he was building their actual family house. Now it's ready to move in. and he hopes that he can bring his family back together. With Kate in Auburn, Leah and Maggie barely scraping by in Rochester, the sisters have now arrived at a crossroads. Do they return to Hydesville and live with their parents, or do they do something drastic in hopes of clinging to their independence a little while longer?
I think I know what they do. The ghosts, the spirits are telling me.
What are they telling you, EJ?
They're saying, oh no, I was wrong, I'm sorry. It's a $4 million mansion in Southern California.
So in the fall of 1849, Capron returns to Rochester to check in on the spirits. He's like, okay, let's see what's going on. And to the amazement of everyone assembled, when he asked for them, they rapped a message, one that would change the fate of the Fox sisters forever. They said, "Higher Corinthian Hall."
Whoa. That's extremely specific. I like these ghosts. These ghosts are great business people.
Yeah, they have like a fucking checklist. They're like, all right, so we got to do this, got to do that. Higher Corinthian Hall, done, right? And
Done,
yeah.
Good?
Yeah. No, it's very interesting when you read Leah's autobiography because it really does seem like the ghosts have like really good business acumen. Yeah. They're the ones that dictate everything. It's never, and that's an interesting aspect,
that is an
right?
interesting aspect, yes.
This is all from her account. This is what the spirits want us to do. We don't want to go perform in front of a bunch of people. The spirits want to perform in front of these people.
Because all those chauvinistic men, that whole chauvinistic culture would just be like, this is what you want. Mm-hmm. You can't have what you want because you have lady parts. Like, yeah. It's okay if the ghosts are telling them.
And I think it's part of the ruse. It's like as long as the spirits are the ones doing it, it takes the focus off of the girls.
Yeah.
So the spirits claimed that they disappeared because they were concerned about being mistaken for hoaxes. And they want the sisters to perform publicly in order to prove their existence once and for all. And they wanted to do it in Rochester's newest public arena.
Oh, God, this is so amazing.
So, yeah.
These girls are so smart.
Dude, so luckily the spirits had their finger on the pulse of what was going on in Rochester, right?
They knew.
Right? They
Somehow.
knew. They knew.
Just knew.
Yeah. Yeah. Because earlier that year, just across the street from the offices of the North Star, that's Frederick Douglass's newspaper, Corinthian Hall was constructed, and it took its name from the Greek columns that are positioned all around the stage. The building's floor space is enormous, and it was used for like lectures, banquets, concerts, theatrical shows, that kind of stuff, right? It had been originally conceived as a library and reading room, so the first two floors have this massive archive of literature.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Notable performers at Corinthian Hall: singer Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale; Buffalo Bill; P.T. Barnum, who gave lectures, not like his circus, but giving lectures.
Oh, okay.
Ralph Waldo Emerson, Charles Dickens, and Edwin Booth, John Wilkes Booth's brother.
Whoa.
Who played Hamlet for the people of Rochester.
So his brother was an actor. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Worth noting, by the way, all of this is taking place a decade before Lincoln even started campaigning for president.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Corinthian Hall, later called Corinthian Academy of Music, goes on to serve its community for like 50 years until a fire largely destroys the building in December of 1898. It reopened 4 years later as Corinthian Theater, but is now a place of masculine entertainment.
So it's
a gentleman's club.
Are the men dancing or are the women dancing?
No, the women are dancing.
Oh.
And this is the future of it.
Okay.
It continues to serve as a gentleman's club for 1928 until it was permanently closed. The building was demolished in 1929, and it's now a Holiday Inn parking lot.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
How the mighty have fallen.
I know, right?
To a parking lot.
It's a shame. It's really a shame. Yeah.
At least it had its peak as a gentleman's club.
I think it peaked before being a gentleman's club. But,
yeah. Okay. Well, that's your opinion.
So the Fox sisters were one of the first acts to perform there. Only Leah and Maggie were there as mediums for the event, though. In her autobiography, Leah insists that up until this point, they didn't take any money for the services. Okay? No money, nothing at all, right? She says, we felt that it would be degrading to accept money for the exhibition of spiritualism.
Wow.
Okay? So this is all like just the kind generosity of their hearts. Now, she does say that her friends very kindly insisted and the spirits accepted money from them.
Oh.
Yeah,
well,
isn't that nice?
That's, you know what?
Isn't that nice?
Sometimes you just have to take it. You know, you sometimes you say, oh, no, that's okay. But if the spirits say, then it's not on
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This would be November of 1849, which would be about 2 months after they moved into their new house. Tickets to Corinthian Hall, the spirits were okay taking money for. They cost 25 cents. 50 cents would admit a man with 2 ladies, because I guess the spirits encourage the cuck lifestyle.
It's not necessarily a cuck lifestyle. I mean, it could be like polyamorous.
Polyamorous.
You don't know. Like, you don't know what
Polyamorous, that's
you don't
true.
know what they're doing together.
That's true. I apologize. A
Yeah.
polyamorous lifestyle.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. With the first thing that you said, it's just that you just can't know.
I don't mean it negatively at all.
And you're not a spirit, so you don't know everything.
I'm just really surprised that they had to specify 50 cents, 1 man and 2 ladies. Like, there enough men were bringing 2 ladies that they were like, you get a discount.
That's very interesting.
Right?
That's funny.
400 people attended. That means that the Fox sisters probably made about $150 for this one event, which today would be about $6,000.
That's a lot of money.
In one night.
Holy crap.
You figure some of that goes out to the quote-unquote higher Corinthian Hall thing, that whatever the
Sure.
door price was. I don't know how that was handled back then.
I don't. Yeah, how badly was the gouging for that?
But even so, what's it going to be? Like $1,000 at the highest?
Mm-hmm.
Like, realistically? So you're walking away, we're talking Leah and Maggie living on their own. You're walking away with $5,000 maybe? Holy shit, man.
That's great.
Yeah. So the show, Leah, Maggie, accompanied by Amy Post, they set up chairs on the stage. Through their now very practiced knuckle cracking and cold reading, they provided communication with these otherworldly entities. Remember, the cold reading is you're asking leading questions and getting the answers and building that narrative a la D&D, right? Mm-hmm. Audiences of this time were raucous, right? And Corinthian Hall was no different.
Yes.
The assembled, they would have catcalled, they would have hollered, they would have generally like made asses out of themselves, right?
Oh, that's fun. I didn't
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And all the time probably trying to throw the mediums off their game too,
Oh
right?
man, so it's kind of like that scene in Tombstone where all the guys are like shouting and
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, shooting the ceiling and all that.
There
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
wasn't any of that.
I don't think they were shooting the ceiling. Corinthian Hall was really nice. I think you would have gotten thrown out if you damaged Corinthian Hall.
Probably, yeah.
So, in the end, 3 separate committees of men and 1 of women were appointed to examine the Fox sisters as they communicated. These investigations were conducted over the course of 3 additional days, each in publicly booked venues, from Corinthian Hall to the Sons of Temperance Meeting Hall. The Fox sisters, they were subjected to all kinds of like degrading levels of scrutiny. Okay? So they would be held down on tables, they would have their legs bound by the ankles, and finally the members of the audience would strip search them. They'd be strip searched by a committee of women before they broke into tears and Amy Post raced to their rescue.
What?
Yes.
Why? What is the point of this?
This is what I was talking about before with the sexual nature to their performances.
But they didn't want that. That's terrible. Like they were doing, like the audience was sexualizing them and
Yes.
like doing that. They didn't want any of that crap to probably happen to them.
Right.
How did that help though? How did that help to make the spirits seem more real by strip searching someone?
It's not that it made the spirits seem more real, it made the act more enticing.
So they were doing this show as if like, oh yeah, we're really testing to see if these girls are real,
No, not exactly. I want you to think about this almost as if it's a vaudeville show.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have a tendency now to think of this in a more sort of respected setting.
Yeah.
But this mediumship at the time really is more akin to early vaudeville acts. Remember, you got your raucous crowds, that sort of thing.
Man.
They're performing, and then you had the opportunity. Now, the men didn't strip search them, but they would send women up, and they would have like take them off behind a curtain or something like that, and strip search them until they started crying. The women
Holy
would do it. Yeah,
Crap, what the fuck?
yeah.
Okay, I gotta get my 21st century brain, like, to
Yes.
this, because
Yeah.
this is not what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah, and the fact that this flies in the face of Victorian good taste, I think, is part of the appeal of it.
Yeah,
Right.
because you think about Victorian times of being all buttoned up, but
Exactly,
honestly,
yeah.
they weren't.
They weren't, right?
always,
yeah,
yeah.
That's just the facade that you project.
Right.
Yeah. So the men who were investigating these claims were so positive that they could identify the source of the sounds that one famously claimed he'd destroy his coonskin cap, and another promised he'd throw himself off a bridge if they failed. But despite all that bravado, all their research came up empty. Although they determined that the noises ceased when the sisters' legs were immobilized, they could not ascertain the source of the sounds. Nor could they explain the intelligent communication. Surely, right? Sure. Again, you got to put yourself in the head of the man. Surely no woman would be capable of enduring such cruel interrogation unless they believed that their claims were true, right?
Oh, absolutely. Indubitably, sir.
In the end, unable to find the source of the sounds, and the Fox sisters refused a crack, right? The only conclusion left is the spirits are truly communicating through them. That's it. That's what it's got to be.
So here's another thought I have.
Yeah.
Do you think that Leah sent Kate away because they were going to do this and they didn't want to put Kate through this? Like, they both agreed that, like, okay, we can take this, we can handle this, we'll get them to believe it, but we don't want Kate.
That's an interesting perspective. I think possibly. Yeah, I think possibly they were definitely a little bit more protective of Kate, especially Maggie. Maggie was pretty protective of her younger sister.
Yeah.
They might have known where this was going to go and what they were going to allow. And yeah, maybe Leah and Maggie together said, all right, well, we can endure this, but let's not subject Kate to it.
Yeah, like,
it's possible.
We'll bring
Yeah.
Kate in when we've got everybody hoodwinked 100%.
Yeah.
And they won't do that. Maybe, and did they ever end up doing anything like that to Kate?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I want to say no.
Okay.
I want to say no because Kate comes back in later on.
Okay.
I know that the whole thing, that the whole exhibition at Corinthian Hall and everything sounds really ludicrous from today's perspective. But to contextualize what was going on, there was this boom of scientific enlightenment that was happening all around the Western world. The first dinosaurs had been discovered 20 years before this, and the term dinosaur had been coined earlier that decade. Doctors were just starting to talk about germ theory and virology. Louis Pasteur comes to the forefront, right? The term scientist wasn't even in use before the 1840s.
Really?
And, no, not at all. And this is 1849. And of course, these advancements were accompanied by a ton of bullshit claims. We already talked about phrenology, the idea that the shape of our heads can be used to determine our intelligence.
What would they say about my head? My head is enormous.
I think that then you're pretty smart.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool.
So there was also the concept of hysteria, a mind-bogglingly sexist idea. In short, hysteria claimed that women's womb wandered throughout the body, like a blind dog, kind of bumping into other organs and causing all sorts of weird symptoms. These had an almost undefined range from anxiety, fear, depression, fever, kleptomania. It was like a big kind of catch-all for anything that bothered you about the women in your life.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. Even things like postpartum depression fell into the symptoms of hysteria, as did bizarre moments, which is the most bullshit medical term I've ever fucking heard of.
Bizarre. Okay, wait. So, like, what's a bizarre moment? I think that like a bizarre moment, like you come into my home office and you're like, oh, what are you up to? And like literally, I'm doing a handstand. I'm just doing a handstand. I'm not talking to you.
Right. You're just doing a handstand. Like that's a bizarre moment. I'd be like, hysteria.
Hysteria. Get her to a doctor.
Also, lascivious behavior. Because remember, all women only wanted to be baby factories and quiet wives.
Right. Right. It's stunning. It's really important. The women's rights movement really like it was really huge.
It's so important, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry. The horny scientists have a solution.
Oh, good.
See, male semen has healing properties. So if you keep your women full of it, semen, that is, you could keep the condition of hysteria at bay. This is fucking real science I'm talking about. This was considered real fucking science, okay? The most commonly known treatment for hysteria is uterine massage, and this is where we get the idea of doctors using vibrators on female patients to relieve their symptoms, right?
Right.
The truth of the stimulating doctor is somewhat murky. It definitely happened from time to time, but many doctors were concerned about conflating hysteria treatments with sex. Mm-hmm. So it's likely that physician-induced orgasm wasn't as common as the media makes it out to be, although it certainly did happen.
Okay.
Some doctors even went so far as to inflict physical pain on the patient during uterine massage to try and prevent the sexual side effects from mixing with the medical procedure. So, yeah, in the 1800s, your healthcare provider sometimes prescribed BDSM when you got cranky.
Huh. Except they didn't want you to enjoy it, so it was like the opposite.
Right.
It's like they'd never heard of the Marquis de Sade or something.
But they would like do the uterine massage and then like smack you and be like yeah, exactly, right?
Oh God.
Even Sigmund Freud, who did a lot of good for the medical world and psychological sciences, he didn't fully understand hysteria either. Freud blamed it on women's anger and frustration at not having a penis, and I am still not making this up.
Freud, he had some ideas, that guy. He had some ideas.
Okay. One of the other emerging treatments for hysteria focused less on the genitals and more on magnets, and I wish I was making this up. Enter Franz Mesmer, German physician and part-time loony, who theorized that mystical energy flowed between all living things and could be manipulated by magnets. Seriously.
I don't know. That's probably still working today. I think that's still probably happening today.
So Mesmer took a patient suffering from hysteria, and he made her swallow some iron. Then he attached magnets to random parts of her body. The patient felt better within a few hours, probably because drinking metal and sitting around with magnets on you was still better than being a fucking housewife in the late 1700s.
1800s now at this point, right?
This was in the 1700s
This was the
that he
1700s?
was doing this treatment.
Oh,
yeah.
so we're going back in time a little bit here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Okay,
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, your day is different. Oh, look,
Yes.
my day is different. Cool.
Yeah. Mesmer, after doing this, declared himself a genius and went on to do the treatments without iron or magnets, using his deep understanding of the magnetic fluids inside people. So he would pass his hands over your like face or body, and he would claim to rearrange the fluids and cure your illness. And if you're saying, hey, that sounds just like Reiki massage, then holy shit, you're right.
Ah.
Reiki, in fact, uses the same principles as mesmerism, just swapping the term magnetic fluids for ki. Some Reiki practitioners even call themselves mesmerists, in honor of the misguided wacko who created the process.
Oh, shit. Somebody should let the insane clown posse know that we know how magnets freaking work.
Yeah. And in what should come as no surprise, Reiki works just about as well as mesmerism, which is to say it doesn't work at all. I work hard to think very critically and form opinions on things based on my research and my understanding of the science and the published literature. And it's been proven time and time again that Reiki is, at best, no better than standard meditation. If I sound harsh, it's because there's an awful lot of people out there literally waving their hands and claiming they can cure illnesses and making a lot of money off people who really, really want to believe them.
And also people who really need medical care.
Yes.
They need real medical care.
Yeah, who should be seeking outside help, trying to find out what's actually going on in them. And instead, they're going to these doctors who are taking their money and doing literally nothing.
Doctors.
Yes, quote-unquote doctors. Yes, these frauds. So, in 1784, King Louis XVI sent his faculty of medicine to conduct a surprise inspection of Mesmer and his silly claims. Among the committee were several scientists and physicians, including Benjamin Franklin. After observing and testing Mesmer's methods, they found no magnetic fluid, and through blind trials, determined that the effects only worked when the subjects were aware of it, much like Reiki.
Much like a lot of things, I think you can probably say a lot of different pseudosciences out there.
Yeah, there's that confirmation bias for a lot of it, where because you believe that it's working, it works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think that this should make me feel better, and so you do feel better. But it's not. You're not actually fixing anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not like on a physiological level. You're not fixing anything, but there is that probably glow of the placebo effect.
The placebo effect.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the committee concluded that Mesmer was merely using imagination. This is largely considered the first observation of the placebo effect, which is when something improves your symptoms because you think it should.
Oh, wow.
Not because it actually does.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Mesmer was driven into exile and died in 1831, but not before his so-called medical procedure morphed into a parlor trick. Now called mesmerism or hypnotism, the practice was often found alongside other parlor magic, like appearing doves and flourishes with silk scarves. The hypnotist would put his subjects in a trance-like state and make them follow suggestions, doing things like standing on one leg or doing tongue twisters. So this had become a very common parlor stage illusion at the time of the Fox sisters as they're starting to do their seances. The actual term hypnotism was coined by the Scottish surgeon James Braid, and his work in hypnotism debunking will come up from time to time as we continue to talk.
Okay.
Now, I know that there are still some of you out there who are saying, but wait, Reiki is different. And for you, I'd like to just briefly talk about Emily Rosa, and then we'll get back to ghosts. In 1996, Emily Rosa was just 9 years old when she saw a video of therapeutic touch being performed. The claim here is that someone can feel your energy with their hands and then manipulate it to cure illness, disease, depression, or whatever random quackery they want. 9-year-old Emily Rosa, under the guise of a science fair experiment, invited 21 therapeutic touch practitioners to her test. She had them put both their hands through a screen, out of sight, and held her hand over top of one of theirs. The practitioners were supposed to detect Rosa's energy field and simply say if she was holding her hand over their right or left hand. That's it. So they have their hands where they can't see them. She holds her hand over top of one of theirs. They have to say which one. 21 practitioners, 10 tries each. You want to guess the average correct response? Like proportional.
21 people. I don't know. Maybe 5 got it right.
44% of the time they gave the correct response.
Oh wow.
66% of the time they were wrong.
That's not very good.
Which means that they were worse than if they had just flipped a fucking coin.
That's worse than a coin flip.
She even allowed them to pick which of her hands they said had a stronger energy field, and it made no difference. Rosa's findings were written up in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1998, and she is still, to this day, the youngest person to ever have a research paper published in a peer-reviewed journal.
All right, Rosa.
Dude, the paper, co-authored by her parents, right, her mother and her stepfather, gives this conclusion. Ready?
Yeah.
21 experienced therapeutic touch practitioners were unable to detect the investigator's energy field. Their failure to substantiate therapeutic touch's most fundamental claim is unrefuted evidence that the claims of therapeutic touch are groundless and that further professional use is unjustified. So yeah, a 9-year-old girl proved conclusively that therapeutic touch, which is the fundamental element of Reiki, is bullshit.
And did it originate at that time in the 1700s? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I think that along with a lot of claims about Chinese medicine, I think you're the one that told me this, like, people call it ancient Chinese medicine, but actually it's like not. So I just don't know how old, that is.
It gets muddy. Okay. Therapeutic touch has its roots in mesmerism. Mm-hmm. But Reiki, it depends on who you talk to. Sometimes it's like the mid 1800s. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the early 1900s.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere around there that it rose to prominence. I read that the origin of Reiki was essentially this guy who went out on a mountain and starved himself for 3 weeks and then realized that he had the power to do this. But that was probably just the result of him not eating for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Man, if I don't eat for like 8 hours, I get all kinds of crazy ideas.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Right? Can't be trusted.
No.
Okay. That was a long tangent. But getting back to the Fox
Sisters. We're going to piss off so many people. Oh my God.
That's why it was important for me to include that little side note. Be like, look, 9-year-old girl proved that it was wrong. So, getting back to the Fox Sisters. Their performances at Corinthian Hall fits right in with the traveling mesmerists, the hypnotists, and the radical scientists of the day, right? The public, lacking a suitable education in science and critical thinking, quickly becomes enraptured by the idea that these girls communicate with the dead. It's fueled by the flames of anti-Calvinism, because if the dead can talk, it means that they may not exist in a binary heaven or hell, but they might be somewhere in between. If so, the afterlife is more complex than anyone understands, and it needs to be studied and scrutinized. Elia Capron, the journalist, had become something of a publicist for the Fox Sisters. Shortly after Corinthian Hall, he published Singular Revelations, Examination and History of the Mysterious Communication with Spirits. He also spent time writing response letters to anyone who spoke skeptically of the sisters' medium practices. One such doubter, identified in a local paper as JD, called them out, only to be met with this response from Capron. I can conceive of no one who is better prepared to judge of the spirit of an old bachelor than JD, for some years occupied that whimsical, fidgety position himself. Which I think was an insult, calling him an old bachelor, like he didn't have a wife.
Oh, interesting.
Like, I think that was scathing.
I think so. I think so. Man, social media was so nice back then.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Now you're just like, shithead.
I know, exactly.
The Fox Sisters themselves continued taking seances in their home on Troop Street, and Kate rejoins in 1850. All the attending are now paying their full share, sometimes booking 3 sessions at a time. Because, you see, sometimes the spirits don't always have enough time to speak to everyone. And they'd tell you so. They'd say, come back tomorrow and we will answer. Or, and you had no choice but to book the following night's session if you want your fortune told. Right?
Yeah. That makes...
You just had to book another session.
They got things to do, these spirits.
Remember, Maggie was just 16 at the time and Kate was only 13. It's unclear how much education they had, but it really wouldn't have been very much. That probably explains why the spirits sometimes didn't spell well, even if they, the spirits, had been well educated in their past lives. In one story, a participant asked a spirit about scissors, which the ghost spelled Sissers, and everyone just kind of had a good laugh.
Aw, that's
Isn't that cute?
That's really cute. Aww.
Yeah, but the communication wasn't always cheerful either. Charles Hammond, a minister, attended a seance in early 1850 and got a terrifying shock. After his first session, the spirits asked him to return the following day, and so he did. Unsurprisingly, the sisters used this time to research his background, although this didn't really seem to occur to him at all. During the second session, the spirit spoke directly about very personal details of his life, including a specific relative's name and dates. Hammond stayed skeptical, thinking that the answers were clairvoyance, not spiritual manifestations. The ghosts were up to the challenge, and they prompted him to return the following night, promising they'd prove themselves once and for all. On Hammond's third visit, the Fox sisters brought him into a different room, likely the second-floor dining room. The group sat around a table, hands on the surface, and lit a candle in the center before calling on the spirits. To Hammond's amazement, the table moved on its own. He says, "I felt the side next to me move upward. I pressed upon it heavily, but soon it passed out of the reach of us all, full 6 feet from me, and at least 4 feet from the person nearest to it. I saw distinctly its position. Not a thread could have been connected between it and any of the company without my notice, for I had come to detect imposition if it could be found."
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
table moves on its own, right? When asked, the spirits returns the table back to its previous position. Then, once again, everybody's hands in full view, Hammond's own chair is pushed back from the table.
That is crazy. I mean, man, that's got to be like one of
So-
the first iterations of that, right?
And he flips the fuck out,
yeah,
right?
yeah, right, yes.
Yeah. Hammond concludes that any of the company could have performed these things under the circumstances in which they were situated would require a great stretch of credulity on my part than it would to believe that it was the work of spirits. It could not, by any possibility, have been done by any party of individuals present, nor attempted without detection. Again, we have this guy who's saying, no, I know. Like everything he talks about here is, I would have seen it. I'm so much smarter than what's going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Can't believe for a second that the wool could be pulled over his eyes, that he could be fooled like this.
I wonder if they picked him for a reason.
It's entirely possible.
You said
Yeah.
he was a minister?
He was a
And
minister.
he was skeptical?
Yes, he was.
What a great person to pick to convince.
Exactly, right? This is the whole thing. These girls are so smart.
Yeah.
They really do pick out these targets and these places like Corinthian Hall. Why are you going to Corinthian Hall? It's huge, it's new, it's a spectacle, right? They made their act into this spectacle. And that's what they're doing here as well. When the knocking becomes sort of commonplace, they scale up. They're like, no, we're going to move tables. We're going to move your chair. We're going to do all kinds of shit like that now, right?
Wow. They understood scaling.
Totally, right?
Yes.
The illusion of table turning or table tipping is as old as the seance itself. Briefly, with everyone's hands resting on a table that has a single base instead of 4 legs,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Any downward force will cause the table to rock. It's very likely that the sisters pushed on their side of the table. They pushed that down, causing Hammond's side to rise up.
Yeah.
Likewise, the moving table is a well-established idiomotor effect, the same one that makes Ouija boards work. First documented by William Benjamin Carpenter and coined by James Braid, the guy who coined hypnosis. The idiomotor phenomenon is what happens when you try to rest without moving in one place. Essentially, sitting still causes you to become hyper-focused on your body.
Yes.
Then you pair this with prior suggestions like, spirits, make this table move. And you actually spend so much time thinking about the movement that you're expecting to happen that your body actually starts making these tiny little movements, right?
Oh, it's like the planchard with the
Exactly.
the Ouija board.
Yeah, that's how Ouija board spirit boards work.
Okay.
Spirits don't come through the board that you bought for $10 at KB Toys.
Oh, come on. Don't ruin that for me too, man.
There are amazing videos of people sliding full-length tables across the floor unconsciously, or at least without like actually intending to do it.
Wow.
So cool, right?
That's cool.
So you think if the idiomotor effect makes you suggestible already, imagine that there are 3 other people in your seance who are actually consciously moving the table to trick you.
Yes.
And now you begin to understand how powerful these manifestations can be to the uninitiated.
Yes.
And then, of course, his chair wouldn't be real hard for somebody across the table from him to plant her foot on that chair and just push, right?
Oh, that's true.
Yep.
That's very true.
Especially if you are pushing that chair and the other sisters around you are maybe sliding the table. So not only is he going back, but the table's moving away from him, gives the illusion that he's going further back than he actually is, because the table's moving away too.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So-
crazy. Cool.
Clearly, the winter of 1849 to 1850 saw the Fox sisters stepping up their game, moving furniture, ringing bells, slaps from unseen hands, and flying objects all became the norm for their seances. And I'm sure they were earning a decent amount of cash from these performances too. But their careers as mediums were just beginning. In early 1850, Eliab Capron suggested taking their act to the next level. Like any good manager, he arranged for the Fox sisters to go on tour. And that's where we'll pick up for our next installment of the Fox Sisters and the Rise of Spiritualism.
Ooh, very cool. Oh, man. So is this guy in on it with them?
No,
Oh,
he's
man.
a true believer, dude. Capron, he believes them 100%. He writes fucking books about it.
Oh, man.
And
And
pamphlets, I guess. But
yeah,
yeah.
and Kate is not with them yet at this point.
Kate has rejoined.
Oh, she has
Yeah.
rejoined.
Yeah,
Okay,
Kate did
gotcha.
rejoin.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, so all three of them are going to go on tour.
Oh, man.
Awesome, right?
This is interesting to me because I used to, I don't know about you, but like, oh no, I guess I do know about you, but I used to believe in all of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
all,
Oh, I did too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like from Reiki to acupuncture to ghosts to, you know, I just I was a sponge. I was like, that sounds great. Yes, I'm going to believe that. And then like, I don't know, just I read books
Right.
and that changed. And I just think that I can really put myself in the shoes of these people in a way, to an
Totally,
extent,
yeah,
as
of course you can.
as best as I can as somebody who is, you know, in this time period.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that it goes as far as it goes, and that there is a crazy audience for it, and there's an audience for that stuff today. You know, it's just that we have more skeptics walking around, I think, than we did back then, because we just have more
absolutely,
access
yeah.
to like education and you know.
It's easier to just point to, oh, this is how they do it now.
Yeah.
I think about like how it must have been much easier. I know for a fact that it was much easier to be a magician even 20 years ago than it is now.
Because everybody's reading up on this stuff, right?
Not even reading. I mean, you just go on YouTube and you're like, how do you do this?
Oh yeah, true.
You know?
True.
Yeah.
And
I watched the DMC, Drum and Money Coates.
Oh, I love
his
him.
show on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I haven't looked, but I'm sure that there are plenty of videos on YouTube that's like, this is how he does all of it.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, it
Yeah.
just it happens right away now.
He's wonderful.
Nothing's sacred anymore. You
yeah,
know?
that's true. That's
Nothing
true.
is like this kept secrets, which in some ways, you know, it's a shame. I do miss that time where you could, you know, pull a scarf out of thin air and be like, wow, look how mystical I am. But at the same time, I'm also kind of like, I like that we have access to that information. I like that people are able to investigate this stuff on their own and learn about it and think more critically and not just be like, oh, wow, you pulled that scarf out of nowhere. And I think that from a magic standpoint, although it seems like it kind of sucks, for me, magic has always been the act of the doing the actual illusion. Nobody who I ever did magic for thought that I could do actual magic. I wasn't using it to deceive people. It was just like a skills test,
Yeah.
a skills demonstration of
Yeah.
sorts. And I would rather live in a society where we have access to the information than when the access is kept from us.
I agree, and I want to be very clear too. I don't want to trivialize how difficult it is to go from the world in which I walked around believing in everything,
Right.
to the world in which now I have a little bit more skepticism
Sure.
going on.
Yeah.
It was a huge uphill climb. Like it's not like, and I don't, because I feel like I sounded like a dick when I was like, oh yeah, I just read books, or it's like, oh, it's good that people can be educated now. I'm like, it's not that simple. It's not. It takes a huge amount of work and a huge amount of inner like introspection.
Yeah. But also you have to realize that the deck is stacked against you when it comes to doing your own research too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because we now have to pay such close attention to the algorithm and what the algorithm feeds you.
God,
we joke all the time because I've wanted to talk about this. For a time, I specifically calibrated my Instagram algorithm to only give me like videos of the worst food possible being made. So it was like people like frying bits of like fucking cheese and then pouring more cheese on it and like flaming hot Cheetos like mashed up and made into a hamburger patty and then deep fried and coated in cheese and deep fried again, like that kind of shit. And I very specifically tailored my algorithm so that was the only thing that Instagram was feeding me.
Literally.
Yeah, you can do it because of like what I interacted with. But it makes me think like, oh my God, what if the thing that you're interacting with is some bullshit medical procedure like Reiki, and then all of a sudden that's all you're being fed, and oh, your Google results start to be Reiki positive as well, and then all of a sudden you don't get that skeptical side to balance, right?
Yeah. This encapsulates not only like the medical industry, but it's also politics and anywhere else.
Yeah, and then
everywhere.
you start thinking, oh yes, they're shipping children in Wayfair Ottomans or whatever, right? And that whole thing becomes the only thing that you see on your feed. So you have to think about not only what you're reading, but also where it's coming from and whether that can be trusted and how much of it are you seeing, and is it all just sort of the echo chamber, or do you have to look outside the echo chamber and all of that. That's why I think this work is so important, dude, because it's so easy to just reject things and be like, ghosts aren't real. But you have to do the investigation. You can't just stand up and be like, well, ghosts aren't real because, you know, everybody says they're not. Like, let's dig into it. Let's look at the Fox sisters. Let's look at the origins. Let's talk about why we know what we know. Anyway, that's why I think it's so cool that we're doing this.
It's fun.
It's important.
And it's a lot of fun. These young women are absolutely fascinating and intelligent, and it's just so super cool to see. Yeah. It's super cool to see what they're doing.
They're geniuses, dude. They're
really
geniuses.
are.
And the way they
really
just
were.
manipulate these guys who are like so smart. Like, I'm so smart. Like, it's great. It's great.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, I love them. They're my idols. We're going to talk more about them in the future episode.
Yes, we have more episodes on them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Next time, we're going to get into their tour. We're going to talk about some gangsters.
Ooh.
Yeah. And we might get a little bit of love. We might get a little bit of love as well.
Romance story.
Little romance.
Aww.
So, stay tuned. Everybody, thank you all for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters. If you like the podcast and what we do, please share it with others or leave us a rating and review. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.